let's for a moment talk about the one man who's not going to be there, Tiger Woods. 49 years of age now. Body obviously continues to break down, unfortunately. He's won one major in the last 17 years, that, of course, the 2019 Masters. How amazed are you, Brandel, that he's still the biggest name and biggest draw in golf at this stage in age?
I guess not very, because what he did, I mean, nobody had ever seen anything like it. And
No.
look, I know I've read you, I've watched you. You hate cliches, you hate hyperbole, and in this job, I hate cliches and I hate hyperbole. I try to be as accurate and as fair as I can be and find the truth of it. So I rage against hyperbole. So when I say nobody had ever seen anything like it, of course, Bobby Jones won those what they were majors then, and
They
the
were.
U.S. and the British Amateur,
Yep.
and nobody had ever seen anything like him. Okay. And then Hogan came along and nobody had ever seen anything like him. And then Nicholas came along and nobody had ever seen anything like him. But when I say nobody had ever seen anything like Tiger, nobody had ever won 4 professional majors in a year. And then on top of that, the Players Championship, and nobody had ever won them by as wide of margins.
Correct.
15 shots,
Yeah.
12 shots. He
Well,
won regular tournaments by 11 and 9 and 8. So he was so far superior to any of his peers, far, far more superior to his peers than Jones was, than Hogan was, than Nicholas was. You can't find, I'm not, I'm not an expert on other sports as you are, but I can tell you in the golf world, nobody had ever seen anything like him. And
no.
it wasn't just how good he was, Skip. It was how animated he was. Okay. He was kind of Muhammad Ali, Michael Jordan, Wayne Gretzky, Arnold Palmer, all rolled into one
Yep.
athlete.
Yep.
And he would elevate hype and then exceed the hype. And that's a very difficult thing to do. And he didn't seem to be sated at all by victories. He didn't seem to be sated by the fact that he'd won 4 majors, because then he'd go try to change his golf swing. So to get to your question, no, I'm not at all surprised, because he gave us so many comebacks. He came back on the broken leg in 2008, won the U.S. Open. Then he came back after the scandal in 2012 and 13 and ascended to number one again. Then he came back from the chippy nips and a bad back to win the Masters again.
He did.
So each time, each comeback is more epic and more improbable than the previous one. So he's teased us into thinking the impossible could happen again. So no, I'm not surprised.
And can the impossible happen again, in your opinion?
I just don't see a way to do it. For all his ability to do things that nobody else can conceive of, he can't do the simplest of things, which is walk around a golf course for 72 holes. He ends up hobbled. He ends up walking, and invariably you end up in an awkward stance. Invariably the wind blows and it gets cold. And he's got this sclerotic body now, where if it's not perfect, 85 degrees and humid, it doesn't
Yep.
feel good. He doesn't look good. He can still swing a golf club beautifully.
He
He can
can.
still hit some amazing shots. But when the ball's way below your feet or way above your feet or 1 foot's in a bunker, you look at it and you think, well, he's going to wrench something here, and inevitably he does.
Mm. So, Brandel, it just tears me up to think about how some of his injuries were self-inflicted after he dominated this game, to your point, the way nobody has for those, whatever it was, 3 or 4 years in a row, all the way up through that, '08 U.S. Open, Rocco Mediate in the playoff. Then Hank Haney's book explains the big miss that Tiger first hurt his knee, actually ruptured his Achilles, wanting to be a Navy SEAL, to follow in his father's footsteps in the military. And he was out on drills with them, going through sort of live fake drills with them with fake ammo, but doing everything Navy SEALs did, and ended up rupturing his ACL. So do you look back and say what could have been? Do you look
Oh,
at that?
absolutely. Skip, I will say, for everything we've just said about Tiger Woods, I would say he's the most underachieving golfer in the history of the game.
Yep,
And the way I get there is I can think of no other golfer who left 10 to 15 major championships on the table,
he did.
who left 30 to 40 regular tour events on the table, Of course, he's the greatest player of all time, but he's also at the same time the most underachieving. When
Hmm.
you look at the time he spent in the prime of his career, not injured, but dismantling and then rebuilding a golf swing only to
Yeah.
arrive back at the exact same place where he started
Yeah.
at the expense of 2 years of time and that win percentage.
Hmm.
So he did it in late 97 all through 98 and half of 99. He did it again at the end of 02, 03, and 04. He did it again in 2010, 11. So at the expense of time. And then when you factor in the injuries, when he won the U.S. Open in 2008, we were there. Live From was there. We were on the set. All of us up there. At the time, it was Nobilo. And we're up on the set. And we had numerous guests come up. All asked the question, where's Tiger going from here? Nobody guessed beneath 20 majors at the end of his career. It was
No.
20, 25 majors. Of course you would.
Of course.
And over 100 tour events. So, look, I mean, it's still a debate. A lot of people still think Jack Nicklaus is the greatest player of all time. I say it this way: Jack had the best career in terms of major championships. Tiger played the better golf,
Yeah.
and which would you rather have? But Jack's record is ungodly: 18 majors, 19 second place finishes. But Tiger had a higher win percentage, won by wider margins. The fact that he didn't get done what we all thought he was going to get done, I think that's part of genius.
Hmm.
Genius is just mercurial
It
and
is.
impossible to figure out. And Tiger was nothing if not a genius.
Hmm. So I assume it's going to stand forever that Jack will have 18 and Tiger 15 majors, because I'm with you. I just can't see one more comeback. So if you want to just go off the majors, then Jack's the so-called GOAT, right? But if you want to talk about what your eyes told you while you're watching Tiger Woods, he was the better player.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's the way I would. That's the way I would sum it up. And look, there's a wonderful book. If you're a real big golf geek, there is a book, and I mean it's an obscure book. It's almost like Bill James wrote the book about,
Yeah.
Moneyball that
Baseball.
spurred
Mm-hmm.
Moneyball. Well, there's a
Mm-hmm.
fella much in the Bill James vein by the name of Bill
Hmm.
Felber, who
Hmm.
wrote The Whole Truth, HOLE, The Whole Truth.
Hmm.
And believe it or not, he uses sabermetrics and a bell curve to go back and look at every single professional golfer in the history of the game to 1860 to present. Well, this book came out about 8 years ago.
Hmm.
And so if you want to argue from a data standpoint, you've got a lot of meat on the bone in that book
Hmm.
to demonstrate how much better Tiger was than every other golfer who's
Really?
ever played it. It's a
Hmm.
great book. The Whole Truth. I recommend
Okay. All right. I'm going to get it today.
it. You will love
So obviously we're back to the oldest cliche: you drive for show and putt for dough. As great a putter and clutch putter as Jack was, I think Tiger was one more level above Jack in
it.
clutch putting, because even against Bob May at Valhalla, I mean, he's just dropping putt after clutch putt from 15, 20 feet like they're tap ins. I don't know. I'd never seen anything like Tiger with the putter. I know everybody wants to talk about Tiger hitting it off the planet, but Tiger as a putter.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, Tiger only began to hit it off the planet when he started working with Hank Haney. If you look at that period from 99, 2000, 2001, 2002, that swing, he was hitting over 70% of the fairways and he was 10 yards longer than the next longest guy on tour. Now, look, John Daly was the longest on tour. Tiger was second by a yard, but John Daly hit driver everywhere indiscriminately. Tiger
Hmm.
hit a lot of fairways and hit driver. He was the best driver on tour.
Hmm.
So, so Tiger had every aspect of the game. He was the longest and straightest, by far the best iron player, the best chipper, and the best putter. So you add all that up, and it wasn't a fair fight. So it's difficult to say who was the better putter, because you go back in history and you watch Jack, and yes, there's a few putts I see that he missed, but an uncanny ability to make the biggest putts at the biggest moment.
He did.
We
Yeah.
have we have data for Tiger that demonstrates that he is the best putter of his era. And I'm throwing that in because look, he would have been if we wanted to parse it, maybe he was second if we look at the period over the time. Maybe he was second, maybe he was third. But Tiger had the latest tee times. So the greens are the most chewed up.
Good point.
And he had the putts that mattered the most week after week after week after week. And when he needed them, that putt that you referred to at the last hole against Bob May, to tie Bob, he had a 6, 7, 8 footer down the hill. And he was asked, and I think this gives you some insight into Tiger's brain and the way it worked. He was asked what he was thinking, and maybe you've read this, but is asked what he was thinking as he stood over that putt. And he said, I was thinking that my mom could make this putt. Yeah, I mean, talk about a way to boil to get it as reductively simple as you possibly can. Um, and then the putt he made at the U.S. Open on the last hole to tie Rocco in 2008. Well, that was across Poana. At the end of the day, at the end of the week, chewed up, pumpy. I mean, that ball looked like
It's
it plinkoed down there, and it went in. So
It went in.
you just can't make him up. I've tried, Skip, for 20 years to sum him up, and it's a very difficult task.
All right.